strict parents growing up. Okay.
My parents.
So let me ask you a question. Think back when you were a kid, right? See, I was born in the Philippines, but I was raised in California, right? Exactly. But because my parents grew up in the Philippines, they took that child rearing, the child rearing habits they had over to America. So I was raised very Filipino at my house. So I never got to see like how children are raised in America. But let me ask you this. Think back when you were a kid. You were sitting in your room, minding your own business, right? And one of your parental units wants you to come down to the kitchen because you're in trouble. How do they normally call for you when you know you're in trouble?
Middle entire name.
Got thrown in there. Whole name with a belt. Okay. So here's what we're gonna do. Here's what we're gonna do. On the count of 3. Everybody in here is going to imitate one of your parents at the top of your lungs, okay? Like, I literally want you to scare the person next to you, like, this is how it used to go down in my house, you need to recognize, okay? We're all going to do it together, so that way it doesn't sound awkward if only one person does it, alright? Ready? 1, 2, 3.
You got this. You got this.
What are some of your names?
I censored out some of it.
Well, I'm Filipino, right? And in my house, whenever we were in trouble, our parents would be like, we are not worthy to be called by whatever name we were given at birth. Like, that's how big in trouble we were. So in my house, whenever we were in trouble, all our parents had to do was do this. Right? If you don't believe me, sneak up behind any Filipino person tomorrow and go, and watch them go. Every time, right? Now, my mom was like real funny like that, right? Because my mom would be sitting at the kitchen washing dishes, and me and my sister would be in the other room playing. And as soon as she hears my sister start to cry, she'll know that I had something to do with it, right? And without missing a beat, my mom will reach down, grab a slipper, and throw it. And somehow or the other, it will always hit me upside my head, right? Like one time I saw her throw the slipper, I got up, ran around the corner, and the slipper followed me. How the hell are you doing this right now, right? So one time, me and a friend of mine, we were outside, we were playing, and his mom comes out and was like, "Sam Duvall, get in the house, it's time to eat." And he looks over at her and was like, "Ma, give me 5 minutes." And she looked at her watch and was like, "Okay, Samuel, 5 more minutes, but then you're gonna have to come inside the house." And then walk back inside. And I'm like, well, damn, I could do that. So my mom comes out and she's like, "Get in here, it's time to eat." And I'm like, "Ma, 5 minutes." Like, I don't even know where that skillet came from. My mom was chasing me around the house with this frying pan. So I went into the bathroom, I locked myself aside, I waited till the shadow beneath the door disappeared, then I snuck back out the window to play with my friends, right? Now, I know what you're thinking, like, why would you do that? That's suicide, right? But you remember what it was like growing up? You had that mentality like, I'm already in trouble, I might as well live it up until I get in trouble, right? And so, now I know, my mom knows I went outside to play with my friends. But I also know my mom's not going to do anything about it. Because my mom's mentality was, all right, you disobeyed me once, you disobeyed me twice, I'm just going to wait till your father gets home. Exactly. Like, do you ever remember playing outside, looking down the street, waiting for that car to come turn the corner, right? And as soon as you see that car, you're like, oh, damn, here it comes. So my dad pulls up to the driveway, I'm running up to my dad, I'm like, listen, Dad, before you go inside the house, I just want to let you know I love you. You only get to grow up to be the kind of man that you've always wanted. And don't forget that the strongest bond has always been between father and son. Look, God has Jesus, I have you. I want you to remember that because there are going to be people in this world that's going to try to break that bond. Lies, deceit, and a bunch of nonsense that's not even true. I love you. Right? My dad goes inside the house, and sure enough, 5 minutes later, he's back outside. Get in here! I knew it. I was in trouble. I go inside that side. I looked at my friends. I wished them my final farewell. Whatever earthly possessions I had left. I think it was a football or something like that. I walk inside the house and my father's yelling at me, right? Like, don't you ever disobey your mother. And my father will spank me. But when he spanks me, he'll say stuff like, I'm doing this because I love you, right? But I was a smart-ass kid, so I looked at my dad, I'm like, well then I can't wait to grow up and love you back. I reached up so high, smacked me across my face. You ever get hit so hard no sound comes out? Frozen. Suddenly tears start falling down my face. My father's looking at me like, you know what, I don't want to look at you right now. Just go back outside and I'll call for you when I'm ready for you. Do you ever go back outside and play with your friends trying to pretend you haven't been crying? Right? Yeah. You walk outside, your friends come over up to you like, yo man, you alright? You're like, yeah man, I'm cool. Come back. So every time I looked at my dad, like I always, I looked at him like he was perfect. Like here's a guy who'll feed me when I need to be fed, will spank me when I need to be spanked, will love me whenever I need to be loved. So to me, my dad could do no wrong, right? Until I turned like 16. Me and my mom were going through a divorce, and I remember being at church, and I looked down, and my dad was kneeling, and he was crying. And it was the first time I'd ever seen my father break down. Like, I don't know about you, but you get to that age when you start to realize your parents are no longer just parents, right? That they become actual human beings with their own faults and their own problems. And all these years you're going through all that, like, they're trying to hide it from you in order to raise you right. When in reality, they had their own problems they had to face as well. Because now I'm like 30, I'm up there. And, and I'm like, man, my dad went through this. And to me, I feel like I know nothing. You know what I mean? Like, I'm so dumb when it comes to, like, matters of the world, right? And I'm like, man, can you imagine? My father was probably just as lost. But to me, I thought he knew everything, right? So I kind of wrote this for my dad, just to let him know that I've grown up now and how much I love him for it and how much I've learned because of him. My father's a funny dude, though, right? My dad, he's so old school. He had the same Nokia cell phone, I swear to you, for like 10 years, right? You remember the Nokia cell phone where you could switch out the different colored faceplates, right? My dad had that. And I'm like, Dad, you can't even text message with this. What are you doing? And he's like, being old school Filipino, my dad's like, why do I need to text message you? I can just call you on the phone. Like, that's just right? So on his birthday, I bought him an iPhone, right? And when I got home, I texted him. I'm like, Dad, how do you like your new phone? And I don't hear from him for like 24 hours, right? 24 hours finally rolls around. I finally get a text message back, and he's like, I like it very much, thank you. And then my phone rings like immediately after, and it was my dad, right? So I picked it up. I'm like, hello? And he's going, oh, I'm just calling to make sure the text message went through. I'm like, what are you doing? You're like, defeat the purpose of why we're text messaging each other right now. Like, he'll text me yes, and then he'll call. And I'll pick it up. He goes, did you get the message? I said yes. So the other day I called him, right, and he picks up the phone. He's like, hey. I'm like, hey. He goes, you ever notice how life is a lot like toilet paper? I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? He goes, how it always seems to unravel faster the closer you come to the end of the roll.
Faster you unraveling it.
Smoking cigarettes with my father. This is what he passes down as profound insight. The day he turned 58 years old, my father has never been clever with metaphors. He attends a prayer group on Saturdays, goes to church on Sundays, and once a month volunteers to serve communion to the elderly at the local retirement home. If the entrance to heaven was measured by the path we take to reach the pearly gates, God will blow breath on my father's feet to lift him to the sky while I would have a lot of explaining to do. I spent most days dodging confession booths while my father served salvation like 6 o'clock medication to folks who think of communion as the frequent flower miles we rack up to get to heaven. Some of them have cashed their tickets by the time my father returned. But he returned. If not for them, then for the old man in room 14. For him, my father remains persistent, peers into his room and offers communion as if this time would be different, only to be met each month by faces distant as the relatives who no longer visit. But for the first time last week, the old man said yes. Took the leavened bread from my father's fingers, placed it on his lips where it lingered until that evening. He went to sleep and never woke again. Left this world with nothing more than a bedpan that needs cleaning, a 3-piece suit to be buried in, and the one question my father started asking since. What is it about death that makes a man finally come to terms with God? I am the wrong guy to be asking. There's a part of me that believes death doesn't give you too many chances to escape the light. Might as well smoke your lungs into midnight, drink like the liver deserves to be punished, supersize your value meals, pimp slap an ex-convict, touch yourself until your brain explodes from a lack of oxygen. There's 6 million ways to die. Choose one that best fits your personality and run with it. Well, I've been running ever since. Going through life as fast as I blow through cigarettes, tipsy walking on the rim of shot glasses, haphazard and reckless, eyes wide open, searching for places I'm hoping God will never find me until I see my father, knees buckled at the pews, hands knuckled at the brow, eyes clenched tight as if redemption revealed itself on the inside of our eyelids, and we're trying to squeeze it out through our tear ducts so the world can see God's glory inside us. My father will never show us tears, but I know Watching how his temples move in prayer, he sometimes curses God for the callous palms, for the tired fingers, cursing how he can weave them so tight with faith, while God just watches his wife, his children, and his ambitions subdue them. My Father, who will feed you with one hand while spanking you into oblivion with the other, who lectures why an A- wasn't good enough, bring home a bean, he'll ransack your room searching for drugs, who will brag to his friends about us, who will worry about my living life with such reckless abandon. My Father, who after every cigarette break always asks if I could stay, even for just a little while, and I find myself always saying no, because I got things to do and places to go, and I watch him disappearing faster from my rear view, distance growing like the skid marks I blaze behind me. You were right, Pop. Life is supersonic, so grab my arm and slow me down like you always have. Remind me not to run too fast. Teach me to look both ways before crossing the street, because the world is out there, blazing by at high speed, and I get lost way too often. And some days I forget to come home, but you should know, these days I'm only reckless on a microphone. I'm looking both ways before making a decision. I'm holding tight before it all unravels with a simple misstep, so please, light up another cigarette. Let the smoke linger a little bit longer. Let it rise to the heavens, and I will ride it like God, blowing breath on my feet. And when I arrive, and they ask me if I've come to terms with my faith enough to come inside, I'll tell them the one thing I know to be true. I'll tell them I came to terms with God the moment I saw God living in you.